Welcome to Reckless Paradise, everyone. I am your host, Marissa. I'm here with my co-host, Dystro. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good week. Um, once again, I'm very tired. I believe we just finished day 5 of our
Mm.
county fair up here where I live. We have 3 days left of it, and then it's done. So I'm more than halfway through fair week, unfortunately, but I'm definitely having a good time.
Yeah, I can always tell that you're tired because the tone of your voice and stuff of that, and every time you're like, God, I'm tired as hell.
It's all good though. I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad you guys are here, those of you who are listening. All right, so let's get into tonight's episode. So, as I had mentioned previously a few weeks ago, I believe it was either in June or July, we had mentioned doing a Van Halen series on this channel. Yes, we are starting this now today. We're going to start off with Let's Talk Van Halen. Basically, we're going to give you all the background info that you should probably know about Van Halen if you don't know already. So that way, when we do the other 2 episodes that have to do with Van Halen, you guys will know who we're talking about. So I grew up around the 70s and 80s rock scene because I was born with a pair of parents that were raised around that kind of music as well. So it kind of runs in my genes, I guess you could say. I don't know about you guys, sure. Are you like the same way?
My mom grew up around like Van Halen and stuff like that too. Um, some of that had rubbed off onto me. Um, but then, like my aunt, shout out to my aunt, she grew up around that same time period and stuff like that too. So like they knew about Van Halen, Def Leppard, and all that stuff. Um, they like as soon as like something like Panama and Jump comes on, my mom's like she like immediately knows the lyrics and stuff, which is kind of like which is awesome because it's like not a lot of people know a lot of Van Halen songs, which I mean we'll get to that in a bit. So so
Right. Um, yeah, so Van Halen started all the way back in 1972. They formed in California in the United States. However, the Van Halen brothers are not from the US, they are from a different country. The OG lineup consisted of obviously the Van Halen brothers, Eddie and Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, who played bass, and David Lee Roth, who was vocalist at the time. This was the OG lineup all the way till 1985, which we'll get to in a little bit. Um, Obviously, they were producing hit albums with David at the time, such as Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, Fair Warning, Diver Down, and 1984, which is probably one of the most popular albums of all time. Has a
oh
picture
yeah.
of a baby on the cover. I remember that. And the number one single on that album was Jump because it was the first song that Van Halen had put out that involved using synth, which is a keyboard and stuff. And as Van Halen fans are used to Eddie playing guitar, he was playing keyboard in this music video for Jump, which people didn't know how to react to that, but I guess a lot of people liked Jump. They liked the change because Jump shot up in the record charts. Like it was freaking incredible how quickly that song reached number 1 in the charts.
Mhm.
It's literally one of the most iconic songs of Van Halen. Like it's like when you think of Van Halen, you think of Jump. Like in my opinion, that's what I think. I think of Jump, and I think of Running with the Devil. Those are like the 2 songs I think of right off the bat when you mention Van Halen with David Lee Roth. Now, due to some creative differences, David also starting a solo career, starting out with cover songs. He did a cover of California Girls, which was a Beach Boys song. And then he also produced his own solo album. So following that, he had left Van Halen. I can't remember if he left or got let go, if he got fired. He left in 1985, and with that came Sammy Hagar, who had replaced him. Sammy Hagar was the replacement for David Lee Roth in 1985, all the way to 1996. Now, when Hagar joined, it was kind of a bit of a game changer. Not like it depends on how you look at it. Some people did not like the fact that Sammy Hagar was a new singer because Van Halen didn't exactly sound the same to a lot of
Mhm.
fans. which kind of turned a lot of fans away from Van Halen. Van Halen had its own sound once Sammy Hagar joined. It was a lot more synth. A lot of the songs were about love. There were a lot of love songs and stuff like that, which not a lot of people were digging at this time. At this time, 1985, people were looking for like rock and roll kind of shit, like hair metal, like Def Leppard and Poison,
Right.
and Bon Jovi, and all that stuff. So when Sammy Hagar kind of joined the picture, kind of mellowed out Van Halen a little bit, which I actually like the Sammy Hagar era of Van Halen. I do like David Lee Roth too, don't get me wrong, but I actually like Sammy Hagar's stuff. Like, it's actually not that bad. They actually did produce quite a few hits as well with Sammy Hagar albums, including 5150, OU 812, and I think there's a couple more, but they didn't really top the charts. But those are like the two albums I can really think of right off the bat that topped the charts. Songs such as Why Can't This Be Love, Finish What You Started, Can't Stop Loving You, which came out in 1995. Those are like songs that still kept Van Halen on the map in the charts, but like it just wasn't the same once David left, because David was what made Van Halen sound like Van Halen. Like, he had the charisma, he had the voice, which I probably shouldn't get too much into the lead singers right now, because I am doing another episode. I'm doing a debate hour episode between these two later on this week coming up, so stay tuned for that. So anyways, back to just Van Halen. Now, once Hagar had left in 1996, once again, they were without a lead singer. So he was replaced by the band Extreme's singer, Gary Sharon. Now, this was a complete flop. Once he joined, it just really went south from there. They kind of were not on the charts anymore. And at this moment, grunge was taking over. All the 90s stuff, the grunge era of the 90s. Like, it kind of destroyed a lot of rock and roll bands' popularity. Like, Def Leppard kind of fell off after the 90s hit, because everybody was going into grunge, like Nirvana and Soundgarden and all this stuff. Alice in Chains. By the way, we did an episode about 90s grunge groups. If you guys like to go take a look at that, go ahead, please. It's a good episode. But yeah, once the grunge era really came in, it kind of knocked a lot of these top rock artists from the 70s and 80s out of the ballpark, like out of the arena, like not in existence anymore kind of thing. And Van Halen, unfortunately, was one of them. But I really don't think Gary Sharon fit into the Van Halen scene. He didn't fit the picture. Like, Sammy Hagar fit the picture more than Gary Sharon. Gary Sharon is for the band Extreme. He does not fit in Van Halen. I've only heard like one song of Van Halen with Gary Sharon, and I just was not. I couldn't finish it. It's just not for me.
It's like 10 seconds and it's like, nope. It just hits pause. Like, nope.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the downfall of Van Halen right there. It's kind of what drew people away further from Van Halen. Like, if they didn't like Sammy Hagar, then they're definitely probably not going to like Gary Sharon. Because if you're like a David Lee Roth fan, you're probably going to be a little stubborn and be like, oh, I can't listen to anybody in Van Halen but David Lee Roth. Like,
yeah,
some Van Halen fans are stubborn. However, so they had went on a little hiatus in the mid 2000s. They had a reunion here and there a few times between 2003 up to 2020, between David Lee Roth coming in for the reunions, and then Sammy Hagar came in for some reunion tours as well. So I guess they kind of went back and forth with lead singers still, even with the reunion tours. However, once 2020 hit, Van Halen officially disbanded following the death of Eddie Van Halen in October of 2020. He died from cancer. And ever since then, Wolfgang Van Halen, which is his son, has confirmed that Van Halen is no more. He literally put in his tweet that Van Halen does not exist without Eddie Van Halen. And that is a strong statement, and I do agree with it. Eddie Van Halen is one of the guitar gods. He is one of the best of all time. He's up there with like Angus Young and Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that. So once he died, Van Halen is gone. Van Halen's pretty much done. Now, there have been talks in the works of having kind of like a Van Halen reunion, but not completely like a Van Halen reunion, because like he said, can't have Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen. You cannot replace Eddie Van Halen. There is no fucking way. So there has been talks with like David Lee Roth and Michael Anthony trying to do like a bootleg kind of reunion. I heard this on Sirius XM, by the way. That's just a little disclaimer. I heard it on Sirius XM about a few weeks ago. I don't know how true it is. It's just rumors, just spectating. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But again, it won't be the same without Eddie. It will not be the same. You cannot replace Eddie. Even Wolfgang cannot replace Eddie. Like, you can't just put Wolfgang in there and say, "Oh, okay, this is Van Halen." No, you can't do that.
He would have to fill his father's shoes like a lot if
Right.
they even tried to replace Eddie Van Halen. There's just no way. Like
Yeah.
I was saying to you, like outside of the pod and stuff like that. Like my friend, before he had passed, he looked up to Eddie Van Halen. Like he was like one of his like
Idols.
guitar like idols, yeah. And like he would like I think he like learned Eruption just by hearing it like by ear sort of thing, and he was just like he tried and error of course, but it's like like he finally got it down, and then he played it for me. I was like, yo dude, that's awesome.
That is
So
oh my god. Eruption. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that too. Eruption's one of the most iconic songs of all time of Van Halen as well, because of the startup, the guitar solo from Eddie Van Halen. What a fucking iconic riff right there. God bless his soul. It's been almost 2 years since Eddie Van Halen passed away, and I remember the day it happened. I was on my way home from going hunting with my dad. I was watching him hunt or whatever. I usually go to spectate, and we turned Sirius XM on. I think it was Hair Nation, and they had announced that Eddie Van Halen had passed away at the age of whatever. I think it was 66. I don't think, maybe 65, 66. And I was like, hold on, what? I go on Facebook and like my timeline is flooded with like Eddie Van Halen tributes. I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me? We just lost like one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I was like very, very shocked because like I don't think anybody saw this coming. In my opinion, I didn't see it coming. I didn't know he had cancer. I didn't know he wasn't doing well. But man, bless his soul. Van Halen is nothing without him, to be honest. Fuck. Maybe we should just say fuck the David and Sammy thing. But at the same time, I kind of wanted an episode about David versus Sammy. Just on the vocalist standpoint. Like, we're not talking like on the guitarist standpoint. We're talking on like the vocalist standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like solo career or even being in Van Halen. So, but yeah, God bless his soul, man. God bless him.
Yeah, R.I.P.
So, yeah, there is no more Van Halen, unfortunately. But again, they're one of those bands that kind of paved the way for other bands, other future generation rock groups. Like I said, they had started back in '72, and they continued on right up until 2020 when they officially disbanded. Oh my god, they have been around for so long.
And it's kind of funny, like how some people to this day, like they still listen to Van Halen, even though it's like, yeah, they have just been disbanded, just gone. Like there's just some people that are like, they remember when they used to listen to Van Halen back in the day too, and they are bringing their kids up within like Van Halen, being like, okay, like this is what I used to listen to back in the day, like, and they're trying to teach them like, hey, like this is David Lee Roth, this is Sammy Hagar, and they're trying to like teach them like like ways of the. I'm trying to think of the like a good phrase, a term, but like just trying to teach them the right era of music, sort of thing.
Like raise them up the right way with the right music, that kind of
right
thing.
Yeah, and it's just
Van Halen's like one of those groups that you and I were kind of raised around, I suppose.
Yeah, because my mom listened to it, my aunt listened to it, and stuff like that. Like my biological dad, he probably listened to it because he was just I don't know if he listened to it or not, but I know my mom did. So
oh, I definitely did. Both my parents did. Now my dad, even though he doesn't he doesn't really prefer the Sammy Hagar era. He has one Sammy Hagar album from the Van Halen days, and it's 5150. And I love that album. It's actually one of my favorite albums of all time. I'd actually like to start a series on this channel called The Breakdown. The Breakdown would be a series where we break down one specific album in an episode. We break it down song by song, try to discuss the meanings of each song if we can figure it out or find it on Google, and basically just talk about it and rank each song that is on the album. I think we should try and do that sometime.
Hey, I don't mind that. Like, that's
Even if
awesome.
even if you and I have to go and listen to the album outside of, the podcast, like we do it on Discord or whatever, even if we have to do that, like we did with the Billy Talent stuff, we can do that.
Yeah, because like there's certain albums out there, like 5150 and stuff like that, and 1984 and all that stuff. Like, even outside of Van Halen, like they're just monumental albums of the times.
Yes.
Like Nirvana's first album and all that stuff. Like, there's like some dark songs in that album.
Like Back in Black, the album that AC/DC had produced shortly after Bon Scott had passed, and dedicated the album to Bon Scott. That would be a good episode, actually. Okay, so I think we're going to do that. In the future, we're going to start a new series called The Breakdown, where we take one album per episode, break it down. fucking DX, just fucking DX, please. Anyway, so we're going to take one album each episode, break it down song by song, talk about the meanings of these songs, talk about how we felt when we listened to these songs, and rank them on a scale from 1 to 10. I think we should do that.
Hey, that's awesome idea.
I already know episode 1, Billy Talent 3. Fuck.
Oh God.
The mistake I made not listening to it, and I love that album.
I mean, hey, at least you rectified that mistake, though.
It's fucking amazing, man. Anyways, so to cap off this episode, when you think of Van Halen, what song comes to your mind?
Oh God.
I've already said mine. Mine's usually Jump.
When I think of Van Halen, like the first thing I do think of is Eruption. But if I'm actually thinking of like a song, I am either thinking of Running with the Devil, Panama, or Jump.
Jump is a classic. Like, it's like the first song I think of. That, Running with the Devil, and Hot for Teacher. I love that music video with Waldo.
Hot for Teacher
is Waldo.
Sit down, Waldo. Wasn't there a song called Ice Cream Man too?
Yes. I heard that song
I love that song
on the radio. I love that song. Also, you're getting a little bit robotic on my end. I don't know if it's my internet, but yeah. But yeah, it's like, holy crap. So I think that's gonna do it for Let's Talk Van Halen. I'm definitely quite happy with how this episode turned out. Van Halen will go down as one of the greatest rock groups of all time, and once again, God bless Eddie Van Halen, forever in my heart.
Forever in everybody's hearts too.
Oh, pretty much. So this Sunday coming up, we will be doing top 5 Weezer songs. I figured we'd switch things up a little bit. We're gonna spread out the Van Halen series just a little bit, so we can just keep going with some other stuff, because we still have a lot of episodes to do. But yeah, so this Sunday coming up, we will do top 5 Weezer songs. Now, everybody fucking knows Weezer at this point. At least I think so, right?
I mean, they should by this point. So.
At this fucking point. There are a lot of Weezer songs. I only found Weezer maybe 2 years ago during the pandemic. But I do listen to a lot of Weezer now. So I figured it'd be fun to just pick 5 songs out of the playlist, make sure that I rank them right, hopefully. All right. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you guys for supporting us, as per usual, if you guys stuck around to the very end. Be sure to follow us on our social media by clicking the link in the description below, which will take you to our link tree, which is everything you need, such as our TikTok account, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, you name it. So go ahead and be sure to support us on our social media. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. And we will catch you guys this Sunday. Peace.
Peace.